Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into global economic inequality, but we're going to look at it through a purely systemic architectural lens. We're stripping away the politics, the individual blame, the moralizing, all of it, just to look strictly at the raw mechanics of why some nations stay poor while others just keep getting richer. Okay, let's get right into it. Let's start with a really simple question. You could call it the hard work paradox. I mean, think about it. If hard work is what made countries rich, then logically, the hardest working places on Earth would be the absolute richest, right? But are they? When we actually look at the global data, some of the most physically demanding, labor-intensive economies in the world are actually the poorest. The intense physical effort is absolutely there, but the wealth never accumulates. So what's actually going on here? Well, the answer is a structural phenomenon that economists call the poverty trap. And honestly, once you truly see how this architecture functions, it'll completely change how you understand global inequality. It's not about a lack of effort. It's about being stuck in an invisible mechanical cage. Let's break down the mechanics of this trap. At its core, it's a devastatingly simple loop. It starts with low income. You're basically consuming everything you make just to survive, which leads directly to step 2, low savings. Having zero savings triggers step 3. Low investment. That means there's virtually no capital available to upgrade tools or technology or infrastructure. And without that vital investment, you're left with step 4, low productivity, which of course feeds right back into low income. This continuous cycle literally locks entire countries in place for decades. Now, I know it can be easy to lose the human element when we're talking about abstract macroeconomic concepts like this. So let's make it real. Let's look at exactly how this loop functions on the ground. Just notice the stark juxtaposition here. We've got identical human effort yielding completely different outputs. Imagine two farmers. One's in the United States and the other is in rural Nigeria. The American farmer is tapped into this massive system. They're using GPS-guided tractors, satellite-monitored irrigation, precision fertilizers that are optimized by real-time soil data. Because of that systemic leverage, that one single farmer can feed over 100 people. Now, compare that to a farmer in parts of sub-Saharan Africa. They're relying entirely on unpredictable rainfall, using manual hand tools, and they frequently lose crops simply because they lack climate-controlled storage or efficient transports. In a lot of cases, they barely produce enough to feed their own household. It's the exact same, if not more, physical effort, but it yields a completely different output. And here's where the trap really tightens at the micro level. Because the Nigerian farmer's income is low, their savings are low. Because their savings are low, their investment is low. They can't just choose to go buy a GPS-guided tractor or install commercial irrigation. And without that crucial investment, their productivity stays permanently suppressed. The loop just continues, totally unbroken. Okay, now scale this up. Take that individual farmer's struggle and multiply it by millions of citizens across an entire map. You transition from an individual problem to a macro-level reality, a nationwide weak tax base. Because citizens have low incomes, the government collects very little tax revenue. And without revenue, they simply can't invest in the critical infrastructure needed to boost national productivity. They can't pave transport roads, stabilize the electricity grid, adequately fund schools, or build modern healthcare facilities. Because of this sweeping infrastructure failure, businesses are forced to stay small, workers remain less productive, the economy stalls out, and growth never actually accelerates. Now, looking at this from the outside, it seems like the obvious solution is just a massive injection of cash, right? Just send capital. But here's what most people miss. And this is a crucial insight that challenges our baseline assumptions about foreign investment and economic growth. Even when poor countries do manage to invest, they often get significantly less return for the exact same dollar. Why? Because investment depends entirely on the surrounding systems. You can build a state-of-the-art factory, but a factory without reliable electricity fails. You can build a brand new highway, but a road without an ongoing maintenance budget immediately begins to collapse. A school without trained and adequately paid teachers underperforms. This is the hidden asymmetry of global economics. $1 million invested in a rich country generates vastly more economic output than that exact same $1 million invested in a fragile economy. Just look at the real numbers for a second. The average worker in the United States produces over $120,000 a year in economic output. In countries like Nigeria or India, depending on the sector, that number can fall to somewhere between $2,000 and $7,000 a year. To put that into perspective, this isn't just a disparity, it's not just a gap. We are looking at completely different economic universes, entirely dictated by the infrastructure surrounding the worker. Which brings us to a pretty uncomfortable truth. If poverty is a self-reinforcing loop moving in a downward spiral, what's happening at the top? Well, wealthy nations operate on the exact same mechanical principles. Let's analyze how this reverse loop builds for rich countries. It starts with high income, which generates high societal savings. Banks have massive reserves, meaning there's a ton of investment capital available for research, tech, and infrastructure. That massive investment leads to sky-high productivity, which then results in even higher income. Rich countries aren't merely ahead in a linear race. They're mathematically compounding their systemic advantage every single year. Now, let's add one final critical layer to our analysis of the fragile economy. Once the poverty trap starts, it acts like a magnet for other cascading crises. These aren't separate, isolated problems. They cluster together as inescapable consequences. Limited tax revenue forces borrowing, which leads to compounding debt pressure. Underfunded schools lead directly to weaker human capital. And constant, nationwide economic stress, that breeds deep political instability. So you don't just get one trap, you get a tightly woven system of traps. And this brilliantly illustrates why just telling a nation to work harder or just invest more capital is fundamentally insufficient. You're fighting an overarching system that has an intense built-in resistance to change. The architecture is explicitly designed to maintain its current state. So as we pull all of this together, we have to recognize a really stark reality. Poverty isn't just a starting condition. It's a structure. It is a rigid, self-reinforcing architecture that keeps countries from catching up, no matter how hard the individuals within that system try. And once you truly see it, you realize something deeply unsettling. It's not just that it's hard to escape. It's that the global economic system essentially functions to make sure escape is exceptionally rare. But the poverty trap is just one piece of the puzzle. I mean, what happens to a struggling system when population growth accelerates way faster than economic growth? In our next explainer, we're going to analyze another powerful structural constraint, the demographic trap. You definitely won't want to miss how that data reshapes the global map. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you next time.